Tonight, search warrant, high-risk drug investigation in Fort St. John. Texting scam, RCMP are warning residents to beware. An ongoing debate, Tumbler Ridge debating whether to replace the old fire hall. Good evening and thank you for joining us. And we begin tonight with the Fort St. John RCMP making an arrest after what they say is a high-risk drug investigation that led to a search warrant being carried out at a home in the city. The search warrant was executed back on January the 17th in the 8900 block of 77th Street. The North District Emergency Response Team arriving in town that day from Prince George, Mountie saying the black armored vehicle on the left was assisting with executing the warrant. It followed what police are calling a high-risk nature investigation. The street enforcement team observing traffic to and from a residence consistent with that of an alleged dial-a-dope operation. Police say they found firearms and evidence to support drug trafficking once inside the home. One person was arrested and later released pending further investigation. Mounties say emergency response was called upon to ensure officer, the public, and the suspect's safety. While the search was being carried out, the enforcement is part of an ongoing effort to suppress drug trafficking in the city. Mounties are warning the public about a text message scam that appears to be sent from the RCMP. No cases have been reported in Fort St. John, according to Constable Chad Newstader. However, the detachment is urging the public to be aware and remain vigilant. Victims across British Columbia have received unsolicited texts claiming the RCMP is unable to deliver court documents. A link is then provided to click to reschedule a court date. Now, police say the message includes a Canada logo, a Canadian flag, and the RCMP logo, and it's in an attempt to deceive the person receiving the fake text. The agency says it would never ask for personal information, either through text or email. The RCMP is advising anyone who receives the message to simply delete it. A years-long debate over the replacement of Tumbler Ridge's fire hall continues. The district is in the process of approving its 5-year financial plan. A new fire hall to replace the current one built in 1982 is among the things being planned for. The current building no longer complying with current WorkSafe BC occupational health and safety practices. A feasibility study was conducted last year, and it recommends a new facility that would also serve it as an emergency operations center. It would also house space for the Tumbler Ridge Search and Rescue. The money for a new building that was estimated at just under $12 million back in 2022 would come from the capital budget. During a budget debate yesterday, Tumbler Ridge Council requested that the administration look into the possibility of other options. Those include a partnership with the RCMP and the BC EHS, who also need their own buildings replaced. Picking a lower cost option is also on the table. Now, the current blueprint would see the current space expanded to make room for 8 trucks up from the current 3. It would also have more space for firefighters, including expanding fitness space and a new training room. The fire hall was set to start in 2026 and to be built over a 3-year period. Drivers are once again being warned to expect delays on the Taylor Bridge starting Friday night. Work on the bridge is scheduled to begin at 7 o'clock Friday. It'll continue until 3 a.m. the next morning. No oversized loads will be allowed on the bridge during the work, and that includes trucks that are larger than 12 feet wide. There will also be single-lane alternating traffic during the repairs. Motorists are being advised to watch for traffic personnel and to monitor Drive BC for updates. The maintenance marks the second time this month that work has been carried out on the bridge. Upkeep was last performed on January the 10th. The leader of the BC Green Party is leaving politics. Sonia Furstenau announcing she's stepping down after 4 years at the helm. She made the announcement in Victoria months after she lost her seat in the provincial election. In her 2 terms as MLA and 1 as leader, she was known as a fierce advocate for responding to climate change. She also advocated for government transparency, and she pushed for investments in the healthcare system. Jeremy Valeriote is one of 2 sitting Green MLAs who will take over as the temporary leader. BC's Premier is meeting virtually with his Canadian counterparts and the Prime Minister once again today, and they're working on what's next should Donald Trump make good on his tariff threat. David Eby says the U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods could hit BC's economy harder than the recession triggered by the 2008 global financial crisis. EB says BC has the people, the skills, and other resources it needs to emerge stronger and more independent on the other side of Donald Trump's tariff threat. The Premier adding that every harm inflicted on BC families will be matched with a response to the United States. Every decision by his ministers is now being made through the lens of a potentially protracted trade war. The Premier also signaled support for COVID-19 style pandemic relief measures to help people and businesses affected by the tariffs, which could come as soon as this Saturday.
I want to assure British Columbians of two things. One is that we're going to work to make sure that the federal government keeps to those commitments, that they treat this as seriously as they did the COVID response. And for our part here in British Columbia, that we will fill in the gaps to make sure that British Columbians are protected.
EB said funding for a federal relief program could come from retaliatory tariffs put on U.S. goods. And more changes along the Canada-U.S. border in the wake of Donald Trump's criticism of security along the 49th parallel. A bystander has captured video of illegal migrants crossing into British Columbia. In response, the Americans have beefed up barricades. As CTV's Abigail Turner reports, it's just the latest barrier to be installed between BC and Washington State.
Hundreds of these rocks signifying the divide between the Canada-U.S. border near the Peace Arch crossing, also used as a preventative measure for illegal migration. But on Monday, this pickup truck carrying 5 Romanian nationals was spotted illegally driving from Blaine into Surrey.
Every 6 weeks or so, usually we see the RCMP have flagged someone within the first couple of blocks of the border.
Definitely, there's a big police presence here often, and I see helicopters going by that I just sometimes assume that's what they're doing.
RCMP arrested all 5 fugitives, including one who had an outstanding warrant. Shortly after, U.S. Customs and Border Protection shared these photos online, saying it has installed concrete and rock barriers to enhance public safety near Blaine.
The timing of it is ironic because this is exactly what Trump has been saying, secure border, keep the illegals out.
The additional rocks have been placed near this former bed and breakfast known as Smuggler's Inn. The owner, Bob Boulay, pleaded guilty in 2021 for helping to smuggle migrants across the border and into Canada.
Lots of people had driven their cars back and forth through his yard, so it is a known area.
85 vehicles have illegally driven across the border near Blaine since 2023, according to the CBP, and the additional barricade is just the latest installment at the border.
This park used to be available for us to go on and for a very long time, and they just recently closed it down, so now Canadians can't cross over.
On Monday, the Canada Border Services Agency announced it will no longer allow hikers to enter the country through the popular Pacific Crest Trail, which crosses the boundary in Manning Provincial Park. And last week, the city of Delta installed this chain link fence to block people from crossing into Point Roberts.
There has been a lot of discussion between Trump and Trudeau with regards to making the northern border more secure. So, is this a sign of times? What's going to happen in the future? Who knows?
And whether it will be enough to prevent any U.S. tariffs later this week. Abigail Turner, CTV News, Surrey.
And an RCMP Black Hawk helicopter is now patrolling the Alberta border with the United States. Mounties releasing footage of the chopper in flight. It's in a bid to strengthen security and in response to America's growing pressure to stop illegal border crossings and drug trafficking. The helicopter will have police officers on board who can respond to any location near the border. Residents along the border may hear and see the helicopter now on a regular basis. And while the increased border security is a result of threats from Donald Trump, so too is an advertising campaign from the Alberta government. The province is striking back at potential tariffs. Alberta will spend nearly $500,000 on Alberta is the Answer. It's a campaign to educate U.S. lawmakers on the importance of Alberta energy. The ads were launched 2 weeks ago, but since then Donald Trump has said he does not need Canadian oil. The Bank of Canada has lowered its key lending rate by 25 basis points today, and that brings the interest rate down to 3%. It's the central bank's 6th straight cut since June, with inflation now sitting at around 2%. The bank says the cuts are having an impact, boosting household spending. It expects the economy to strengthen. The bank's governor says even if tariffs hit, it's hard to predict their impact. New polling says a majority of Canadians believe the country's international reputation has taken a hit over the past year. A new Nanos research survey shows 42% of all Canadians feel the country's global reputation has not improved over the past year. That's up from only 15% who felt that way in 2020. The last time the number was this high was in 2013, when it was at 45%. And the Trump administration signaling once again the president's plan to impose tariffs on Canadian goods are still very much on the table. Today, Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister is traveling to Washington, hoping to change some minds. Melanie Joly will meet with new U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. It'll be their first face-to-face talks since the former senator took the position. Joly telling reporters this week she still believes diplomacy can stop Trump from following through on the threat. And a federal judge is temporarily blocking a push from the Trump administration to pause federal funding.
I am leading and joining with my colleagues, my fellow Democratic attorney generals, in suing this administration to stop this illegal freeze of essential funds for our state.
The block was put in place while the Trump administration tries to root out what it calls progressive initiatives. The White House says the decision to halt loans and grants was necessary to ensure spending complies with Trump's executive orders. The Trump administration is also offering 8-month buyouts to all federal employees who opt to leave their jobs by next week. It's in an effort to shrink the size of the U.S. government. And the confirmation hearing getting underway today that could put Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of health care in the U.S. And his cousin Caroline Kennedy says he's unqualified for the job.
He lacks any relevant government, financial, management, or medical experience. His views on vaccines are dangerous and willfully misinformed.
Carolyn posting this video online. She also wrote a letter asking senators to vote against RFK Jr.'s nomination. During the course of the hearing, RFK Jr. is expected to be grilled over his many controversial views, including his anti-vaccine stance, and Republicans will also be looking for assurances from him about his stance on abortion. Now, if confirmed, RFK Jr. will head a $1.7 trillion agency. Well, a tragic scene in northern India today where at least 30 people were killed in a stampede at the world's largest religious gathering. State authorities say dozens of people were also injured at the festival. It happened as tens of thousands of pilgrims rushed to take a holy bath in the river. India's Prime Minister calls the incident extremely sad and offered his condolences. Today is the sacred day in the 6-week Hindu festival. All right, stay tuned. I'll be right back with weather, but as we head to break, here's a look at today's closing market numbers.